Hey everyone, and welcome back to my channel. In today's tutorial, I'm going to be showing you how to make this sleek and responsive slider using React and Tailwind. So as you can see, this is what I call a timeline slider. So on the left hand side you have the text, and on the right hand side you have the corresponding image. So every time an item is clicked, the corresponding image shows up on the right hand side. This is great for any project. So yeah, let's get into it. So first, we'll just create our React app. I'm using Next.js, so I'm typing in create next app. If you was to create a React app, you just to create React app. So same thing. And then obviously just configure it as you wish. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to add some state. And this state is going to basically have the active index and set active index. So what that's going to do is going to determine which item in the slider is being displayed at what moment. So the active index will be used to differentiate which item is active at the moment in time. So I'm just going to import some images, and I'm going to I've got an array of objects that basically contains all the data that will be used in the slider. I'm just going to import the image now, as you can see. And yeah, so here you can see the different items. So we've got question, answer, and image. So next we're going to install frame in motion, which is going to be used to handle the animations. Cool, so now we've got what we need to start. So first of all, let's just start with styling the outer div, so just the outer div container. So we'll just give that a width of 4, a padding on the y-axis of 20 on small devices and 40 on larger devices, just to keep it centered in the middle of the screen. And then we're going to keep a margin on the x-axis, a padding on the x-axis, sorry, of 4 on mobiles and 14 on larger devices. Just keep things nice and centered. So I'm going to give it a flex row on larger devices and a flex column on smaller devices. So flex row would just mean each item, see, next to each other on a row, and column just means up and down. So now I'm just going to create the div the left-hand div, which is going to contain title and the instructions and the question. Sorry, the question and the answer. That's going to be a flex column, and we're going to justify that between, which as you'll be able to see later, that this divides things from top to bottom. So as you can see, I'm giving this a half width on larger devices and a width of 4 on smaller devices. Yeah, so as you can see here, so we want it to be split left and right. So that will be the left hand side and this will be the right hand side. Yeah. So I'm just styling the left hand side right now. And now I'm going to make the container for the image on the right hand side. So as you can see, both have a width of half. Yeah. So what I'll do now is just create the title. Just put inside H1. Just paste that title in. Just give it some styling. Make it a bit larger, so I'll make that font medium to give it a bit of thickness. And then I'll give it 2XL on small devices and 3XL on larger devices, which I think is a good size, as you can see there. And now I'm going to create the container for the content. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to map over the array, which is timeline items.map. And then from each item I'm going to get so from each item in the array I'm going to get the item which contains the text and the image, and then I'm going to get the index. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to display each question, even though it's not actually a question, so I'm actually going to change this name because it's a bit confusing. So I'm just going to call it title and description. Yeah, that makes it a bit more easier to understand. So I'm going to do item.title. So as you can see, it maps over each item in the array and just displays the title. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to display the image on the right hand side. So for this, what I'm going to do is going to use the next image tag, and I'm going to give it the source of timeline items, which is obviously the array, but then the active index is going to be what is used to select the item from the array. So the active index is corresponding to a number, so whichever number is active at that time is going to display that image. So it's going to find that image from the timeline items, and then it's going to, with the dot image, it's going to display that image corresponding to that active item of the active index. If that makes sense. Let me just give it an alt tag now. I'm just going to call that timeline image. I'm going to create the learn more button now. Just fairly straightforward. Just going to make sure it's inside the same div. So I actually have to put inside this div, not that one, so perfect, yeah. Just give it some margin, a bit of space between. Just round the button as well. Yep. Give a background of black. I'm gonna give it text of white. Width of max. Give it some padding on the x-axis of 4 and on the y-axis of 2. It takes a bit smaller, and let's add a little hover effect now. So just add transition. Transition all. And now when we hover, it just gives you a nice little transition. So I'm just going to wrap the item.title within the h1 tag. I'm going to give this now an onClick function, which is going to set the active index to the current index of the item that is clicked, basically. So what this does is it sets the state. Going to add the cursor pointer, so as you can see, every time you click on it, what's happening is the active index is changing, and when the active index changes, the corresponding image is displayed, because here the active index is what is suggesting which image is displayed. So once you change the active index, the image changes. So now we'll add some conditional rendering. Some conditional styling, sorry. So first of all, just add some margin to the margin bottom, add a border on the bottom as well, and add a little bit of padding. And this is where we want to do some conditional styling, where we'll say if the active index is equal to the index, then we want the border to be black, and if not, we want the border to be grey, light grey. If not, we want the border to be light grey. As you can see now, each item that's selected, which is basically the item which active index is active, obviously each item then changes, so the border changes colour depending on which item is active. Yep, so we'll give this a key now. And we also want to give this some conditional rendering, where we will say, let's just make the font light first. So just give it a bit of styling with H2, H1, sorry. Need the text XL on small devices and then 2XL on larger devices. we want to say if active index is equal to index, we want the text color to be black. If not, we want the text to be grey. Yep, nice. So basically, yep, as you can see, the selected one is black and the rest are grey. Perfect. And now we want to display the actual descriptions. So we'll just put that in another div. We'll call this item.description. As you can see, now all of them have been displayed, which is not how we want it. So just copy that inside the p tag. Let's give this some styling as well. Let's give it text SM, padding bottom of 2. And I'll just make it text grey. So what we've done there is, that's how we want to, so we don't want it to be displayed there. So for that, we only want the text, the corresponding description to be displayed when the item is active. So for that we use frame of motion to handle that. So what we'll do is we'll just turn this div into a motion div by simply just adding motion, which we've just imported from the frame of motion library. So we'll just wrap the p tag in a motion.div container. And then what we'll do is we'll give it an initial. So first let's just give it a class of overflow hidden, just so it doesn't overflow from the borders, so it stays within the margins. And then we want to give it a value of an initial, and we're going to set this to opacity 0 and height 0 also. Yep. And then we want to add animate. And for this, we want to do some more conditional rendering. So we'll set opacity, and then we'll say if active index is equal to index, we'll make the opacity 1. Otherwise, we'll leave the opacity as 0. So what this is saying is, only make the item that is active, give it the opacity of 1, and the next we'll do for height as well. So as you can see, initial height is set to 0, and we want to say set the height to auto if active index is active. So what auto does is just displays what is in, it displays the automatic height for the container, for whatever's within the container, sorry. So yeah, as you can see here, whichever item is active is the one that's being displayed. So the item that is active is given the height and the opacity of 1 and the height of auto, otherwise 0. Yep, so now let's just add the transition property just to make it a bit smoother. So we'll just change the duration to 0.3. And we'll just give an ease of ease in out, just to make the animation run quite smoothly. Perfect. Looks great. Looks good. So what we need to do now is we need to handle the animation on the image because it's just popping in, as you could see earlier. So what we want to do now is we want to add a fade. So we're going to add animate presence, which also comes from the frame of motion library, to wrap our image around. Yep, as you can see, just import it from there. And we want to give this animate presence a property of mode weight. So what this does is it allows the animation to be applied when React components are added or removed. So it's particularly useful for handling exit animations and enter animations. And this mode wait ensures that the animations for elements being removed from the DOM are completed before starting the animations for the elements being added. So this basically prevents the animations from overlapping and ensures a smooth transition. Okay, cool. So after that, we're going to wrap the image in another div, and we're going to give that another motion, a motion div that we're going to wrap the image around. I'm just going to give that the key of active index, and then we'll give this an initial of 0 as well, as earlier. Opacity of 0, sorry. And then after the animation, in the animate property, we want to give it the opacity of 1. Now we'll just set the transition properties, which give it a duration of 0.3, and then we'll give it an ease of ease in out as well, just again to let the animation run more smoothly. As you can see there, got a nice little fade animation. Beautiful. I think it is a bit too fast, so I'm going to change that from 0.3 to 0.5, yeah, so let's see how that looks now. And just give the rounded corners to the image, so just make that rounded.lg, rounded-lg, sorry, and that looks a lot better now. You can see the animation works nicely. Perfect. Thank you for watching.